One way that Earth moves in space is Earth rotates. This is when it spins on its axis, and so this invisible line through the center from the North Pole to the South Pole is called the axis, and Earth turns counterclockwise, and so half of it's always getting sunlight and half of it's always in darkness. The part that is in the sunlight would be daytime, and the part that's in darkness would be nighttime. And so one rotation is one full turn, and that takes 1 day. Okay, so looking at this model, we can figure out what time of day it would be on Earth at any given point. And so we're starting with A, and this is like a top view, like if we were looking at Earth from above, and A would be a point right here that is directly in front of the sun. And so this whole part is daytime, but specifically A would be noon because the sun is right overhead. The opposite of that would be midnight because it's directly opposite the sun. So that would be midnight on Earth. So then you have to figure out B and D. And if you remember that Earth rotates counterclockwise, that after A comes B. And so afternoon before midnight in our daily life would be sunset. And so this point at B is when it would be sunset, and then C is midnight, and then D would be sunrise, about 6 a.m., and then it starts over. So noon is at 12 p.m., and sunset 6 p.m., and midnight is at 12 a.m., and it just keeps going. So noon, sunset, midnight, sunrise. So along with rotating, Earth also revolves. That is what it's called when it goes around the sun. And so one full lap is called a revolution, and that takes 365 days or 1 year. And the path of revolution is called its orbit. So this white line would be the orbit, and it's going around, which is called revolving. Maybe you've seen here with this thing that says summer, and then it will say autumn and winter. These are all seasons. So 2 things are responsible for seasons. One thing is this tilt, right? So this red line represents the axis of Earth. It is not straight up and down. So the axis is actually tilted. And so like right here, part of this Earth is tilting away from the sun, but as it goes around, now it's not. This whole side gets daylight. So as it goes around, okay, now this whole side's daylight, that's tilting towards the sun. So we're going to look at each location to figure out what season it is. Okay, so if the Earth is right here, and it's tilting this way, it's called the December Solstice. And so what's happening is you can't see if the equator was here, but basically the northern hemisphere is not getting as much direct sunlight. You can see that because the whole North Pole is in darkness. But the southern hemisphere, this is in daytime, even when it would be nighttime. So the December solstice is when there's not an even amount of daylight. So sol has to do with the sun. So let's look at the northern hemisphere. That's this top part first. It's tilting away from the sun. It is winter. Has a less direct sunlight, shorter days, longer nights, colder temperatures. But the bottom half of the Earth, the southern hemisphere, is tilting towards the sun. So you can see that this side is closer to the sun. This will be summer. It has more direct sunlight, longer days and shorter nights, and warmer temperatures. And so the opposite of summer is winter, but both of these are solstices because they're getting uneven amounts of daylight. Next is the March equinox. And so in the northern hemisphere, it's not tilting toward or away from the sun. It's like parallel to the sun. This would be spring in the northern hemisphere, 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of nighttime, moderate temperatures, so like not super hot or super cold. In the southern hemisphere, again, not tilting toward or away from the sun, this would be autumn or fall. It's 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night, and again, moderate temperatures. So pretty much they're the same thing. These are the 2 neutral times of the year, and some students are like, well, how do I remember if it's, which hemisphere is spring, which hemisphere is fall? Look back at what came before it. So in the northern hemisphere here, it was winter. So what comes after winter is fall. In the southern hemisphere was summer. What comes after summer? Autumn. So that kind of helps you to figure it out. June, now we think of June, we think of summer. and that is summer in the northern hemisphere. More direct sunlight, longer days, shorter nights, warmer temperatures. But in the southern hemisphere in June, the hemisphere is tilting away. And so this would be winter. Less direct sunlight, shorter days, longer nights, and colder temperatures. So we have our winter in December, but the southern hemisphere has their winter in June. And then the last season is the September equinox. For us, we're not tilting towards or away. This is our fall. 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night, moderate temperatures. But in the southern hemisphere, it's spring. And so once again, if you're like, okay, I know that these are equinoxes, but how do I know which hemisphere is which season? Look at what comes before it. So here in the northern hemisphere, it's summer. Also think of what you know. So in June, it is summer. We are in the northern hemisphere. We are right there in the United States. So we're very far north. It's summer for us. What comes after summer? We go back to school in the fall. Also, September is the fall. So if you can remember these months and you can remember the order, that will help you understand seasons.